Hi, welcome back to Master Recaps. Today I will show you a thriller crime film from 2018 titled The Witness. The incident happened to Sung Min, an ordinary office worker who lives with their lovely wife and daughter. Until one night after a party with his friends at work, Sung Min returned to the apartment while everyone was asleep. Suddenly, he heard someone's cry for help at the bottom of the apartment, and when Sung Min looked out, he saw a sight of a young woman fleeing the pursuit of a serial killer. He watched until it slaughtered its victims, but then an unexpected turn of events happened as he was about to call the police. His previously asleep wife woke up to go to the bathroom and turned on the light, giving the killer a single ray of light emanating from him from the apartment, and he knew immediately that there were witnesses to his actions. The next morning, police were informed that the body of a woman who had been murdered had been found on the ground floor of the apartment. Sung Min knows that they need witnesses at the scene and witness the events of last night, but if he shows up, there is no guarantee that his children and wife will be safe. Sung Min therefore chooses to keep this a secret to protect his wife's life, as he lives with constant paranoia every day, fearing that the killer will return to attack him and his family. It's murder, but the police later discovered that the victim had been murdered around 2 a.m. that day when they chased surveillance cameras inside the apartment and realized that Sung Min had been home at that time, and he might be an eyewitness of the murder. The police then tried to interrogate Sung Min what he saw that day, without realizing that if Sung Min cooperated with the police, the real killer who was still on the loose could go back and kill his wife and child at house. Sung Min decided not to cooperate with the police. Several days later, the police tracked down the story of the young victim, until I found out that she recently broke up with her ex-girlfriend not long ago and has a history of reporting this man as well. They then deployed to chase and apprehend the man before he decided to end his life by taking the poison. News of the closing of a horrible murder in the apartment complex was quickly spread until Sung Min saw the killer's face, which shocked him to the extreme because it was a different person that he saw that night. The next morning, Sung Min was knocked on the door by his roommate, where she asked Sung Min if he saw the killer, because she saw it too. That night, the couple took the elevator together at 2 a.m. She attempts to persuade Sang-hoon to report to the police that the real killer is still at rest. But Sang-hoon rejected her and hurriedly kicked her out of the room, as he didn't want to get involved in any of this anymore. The woman leaves Sang-hoon's room and heads back to her room, unaware that the serial killer has been stalking her from the start. She was beaten to death in her room. Sang-hoon, hearing a phone call that didn't belong to him, glanced at her cell phone that had fallen into his room. He decides to return it to her, which allows Sang-hoon to witness the murder for the second time in his life. As he was about to escape from a murder scene, her phone suddenly rang again until the killer realized. Sang-hoon, having fled to his death, came downstairs to ask for help at the guardhouse, with the killers chasing him closely. Sang-hoon tried to use the phone inside the guardhouse to call the police to report the incident, but he was interrupted by the sound of his young daughter and his wife. They both returned home just in time and were standing next to a serial killer who had just killed someone a moment later. Seeing this, Sang-hoon decided to put down the phone and ran back to his family. The killer escaped into the building. At that moment, Sang-hoon knew that he and his family would never be safe again. Jae-yeop, one of the detectives working on this serial killer case, was the only one who felt some sort of murder disorder. It was too easy for them to close the case quickly. It was as if someone wanted him to catch the villain, which, if he wasn't wrong, could have been the work of the real killer who set the police up to get lost. So he asked to bring the case back up and do it again by chasing back the events from the beginning until he was sure that they caught the wrong killer. On the day of the incident, a large number of people in the apartment came to watch the incident. But there was the only one among them who didn't even look at the corpse at all. But that man, and that man, who was looking up at his own room, was Sang-hoon. Jae-yeop knew that Sang-hoon was the witness who witnessed all the events that night. He will try to persuade Sang-hoon to testify for the police in order to catch the real killer. Sang-hoon gathered all the courage he had to testify against the police. He is willing to witness the murderer who has committed several murders. Minutes later, all the troopers stormed to capture the real killer inside his house. They were trapped inside the house until everyone was injured. The killer managed to escape the police's arrest and headed towards Sang-hoon's apartment. Sang-hoon, having heard the news that the police couldn't catch the culprit, rushes out of the police station to protect his family's life. Sang-hoon's wife faces a killer and struggles to save her daughter's life, which she held back until Sang-hoon came to help her and the child in time. The killer then ran up the mountain with Sang-hoon chasing after him. Sang-hoon now realizes that being cowardly and hiding doesn't help keep his family safe, and the only way to put an end to this is to put them in jail. The two of them fought fiercely, and despite their vast age differences, but their fighting purpose was not the same. Sang-hoon was finally able to defeat the serial killer and the killer was finally captured. Later, Sang-hoon immediately moved out of that apartment. That same night, he stood in the spot where the woman was murdered that night and shouted for help with all his might, as a result of which no one would turn on the light or open the window. Came out to help him even one. People would always think of themselves first that day if Sang-hoon hadn't come out to the murder scene. His family life would continue to be peaceful here, but many more innocents were murdered at the hands of this killer, which reflects the current state of Korean society. It's the end of the movie. Subscribe for more video like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.